Good morning, everyone. This feels like church. Everybody's back several rows. This is our last class of the season. Last week, we discussed, reflected on towards the end of Exodus of the golden calf and that big incident. And what happened in that story, the end result? Moses has a fit, throws down the tablets with the Ten Commandments, breaks them, sees the people reveling, dancing, worshiping a false god, a golden calf representative of Baal or fertility gods, Egyptian gods, and the Levites, the tribe of Levi, kill at God's command the bad people. And so there's a purifying and a sense of conditional covenant. Y'all quit acting like that, is what I would have heard growing up, and shape up or I'll have to come in there. And so there was a warning, but then there were consequences, action, and that seems to be settled. So are we still part of the covenant or not? Is Yahweh still our God or not? Yes, but Yahweh continues to act like Yahweh is upset with the people. And remember, this is a growing understanding of God rather than God changing. It's how we understand God is a better way, perhaps more helpful way to look at that. So Moses had come down. God says, go down from here and see what your people are doing. Then that incident occurs. Today, and this is chapter 33, the Lord said to Moses, go, leave this place, just like he had said before. You and the people whom you have brought up out of the land of Egypt. Did Moses bring the people out of Egypt, or did Yahweh do it? Well, depending on how you look at it. And so this is Yahweh talking. Why does your son keep doing this? It's that type of thing. When you're mad, you distance yourselves. And so Yahweh is saying, Moses, you led these people out. You're responsible. The whom you have brought out of the land of Egypt, and go to the land which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What land is that? The promised land, what we now call Israel, saying to your descendants, I will give it. I will send an angel before you. This is very hard to hear, this part of the story, because it has absolutely contemporary consequences. Go to this land, the one to your descendants I will give it. I will send an angel, and I will drive out the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, Hivites and the Jebusites. Who are all those people? Well, the short answer is we don't really know because they were basically wiped out. But they were the people living, various tribes, living in those areas at that time. The Canaanites are probably the easiest because that's the land of Canaan. The other ones are just local tribes. And so all these people live there at various points, and now God is giving this land to the Israelites. That's the idea. Go up to a land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go up among you. Weird. Or I would consume you on the way, for you are a stiff-necked people. I love that. When the people heard these harsh words, they mourned, and no one put on ornaments. For the Lord had said to Moses, say to the Israelites, you are a stiff-necked people. What does stiff-necked mean? Stubborn. What was the other? Rigid. Stubborn is really good. Overly proud, overly stubborn. Stupidly so, probably. Not giving in. You are a stiff-necked people whom I deeply love. Remember that part? If for a single moment I should go up among you, I would consume you. So now take off your ornaments, and I will decide what to do to you. Go to your room, and I will think about how you will be punished. Therefore the Israelites stripped themselves of their ornaments from Mount Horeb onwards. What in the world are the ornaments that we're talking about there? The ones they got from the Egyptians. So think about it. If your conception of slavery, how many slaves have gold bracelets and nose rings and earrings and necklaces and everything else? You don't have a lot of that if you're a slave. You'd rather have food and other things. So these were Egyptian jewelry, ornaments that they took with them, gold, silver, clothing, etc. Take all that off. Why would you take those things off? If you go to a party, do you put those types of things on? You wear a nice outfit, ornament, what jewelry we might say. If you're going to a funeral, you still put on nice clothes, but do you wear the same things? Well, no, Jonathan, obviously not, because it's a whole different vibe. It's not, look at me and how fabulous I am. You're dressing out of respect. And so in this moment, when you grieve, do you wear bright reds and pinks and yellows and oranges when you grieve? No, even we still know that. You wear somber colors. When you go, take off your darn ornaments, because why? Why would this happen? To be more somber. We're in trouble. This was a deliverance from slavery, moving into the promised land, and Yahweh was with us. But in fact, because we acted up and out and worshiped other gods, what we were just told is the most important thing not to do. I am the Lord your God, I have no other gods but me, Yahweh. The most important thing, and Moses is gone for 40 days, for 5 minutes, and we chase after other gods. We did the exact thing we were told not to do. By the way, amazing parallel between Adam and Eve in the garden and the Israelites leaving. Okay, y'all can do anything you want, eat any of the food you want, except this one thing. And you also know if you tell a kid, don't do that one thing, what are you going to do? It becomes, you make it taboo. It's more exciting, intriguing. I want to do that just to see what it is. Maybe there's an element of that, but there's still consequences. And Yahweh says, in Adam and Eve's story, in this, no other gods before me, the main thing, and all others to a degree flow from that. They chase after other gods. They are made, which to me is the most delicious punishment I could imagine. So you worship Baal made from gold, melted down from Egyptian jewelry into a golden calf. I'm going to pound it down and put it in water and make you drink it. That's what Moses did. Fantastic punishment. So that's still in the back of their throat, in the back of their mind, this punishment. They do all this, and if Yahweh is around, and Yahweh is so holy, so powerful, so other, we'll get another story about this in a bit. If I'm around all of you people, you'll be consumed. You cannot deal, you can't handle my holiness. And so to protect you from being destroyed, I'm going to take a step back. And this is no longer a party, a celebration because you're delivered. No, this is a time of penance, of penitence, of mourning, because you didn't do the one thing I asked you to do. And you can't keep the covenant. And so if I'm around you, you're going to die. So rather than let that happen, let's mournfully move in. We're in a long time out. And then we'll see what it's like. And remember, this is the very first part of the journey. How long does it take for them to get to the promised land? 40 years. Not a specific time period, but 40 days, 40 nights. Jesus fasted. It rained with Noah's Ark. It's a long period of time, a couple generations. So everybody that right now did the wrong thing, not one of them gets into the promised land. Get out, I keep saying this, get out the paganism, remove the Egyptian slave mentality, the Egyptian deities, to become God's free people of covenant. And it's a by stages thing. The angel, in the Hebrew the word is malach, which is messenger, deputy, ambassador. Same thing, by the way, in Greek, has all those same connotations. So it's not a super strong man, it's an otherworldly creature standing in for God to represent. The same type of figure probably in the burning bush, the leading them around. It's an echo of Adam and Eve again in the garden. There is not God's presence, but something akin to that. And this angel is so fierce. Is an angel a male or female, masculine or feminine? We would, in today's parlance, say an angel is non-binary, which is a very weird thing. Usually angels are youngish portrayed. A very strong warrior like St. Michael, wearing often Roman weapons and armor, killing a dragon or something. But biblically, that's not what angels, how they appear. They are fearsome. That's when they do not be afraid. Because if you saw this six-winged creature with fire blowing out and you would be scared to death. So this is not, oh, it's a cute little cherub come to lead the way. Oh my God, stay away and go over to our enemies, because if that's just an angel, a tiny ambassador of Yahweh's presence, we absolutely do not want Yahweh around. That's just too much. So they haven't got that yet, but they're starting to. This angel will clear the way of all enemies to the land. When usually we hear it's the land flowing with milk and honey. Think of gushing, overflowing. We've been slaves with nothing, and we're going to a place with water and shelter, and we can grow things, and we can have sheep and goats and the rest, and all the good things you would want. This is what that place represents. It's kind of a return to Eden. That's what Yahweh is leading us to. So God is so holy because the people of act so unholy. The angel stands in for God's presence. Several times this will come up. If you're around Yahweh, you'll die. Well, that's weird. If you don't stare into the sun, it's too powerful, it will burn your eyes. Don't stay out in the sun, it will burn you. This is a similar thing. It's just something we cannot deal with. Now, chapter 33, verse 7. Now, Moses, it's a different story. Moses used to take to the tent and pitch it outside the camp, far off from the camp. He called it the tent of meeting. And everyone who sought the Lord would go out to the tent of meeting, which was outside the camp. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people would rise and stand, each of them, at the entrance of their tents, and watch Moses until he had gone into the tent. When Moses entered the tent, this needs an editor, by the way, to make this a little more concise. When Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent, and the Lord would speak with Moses. So that same pillar of cloud that led the people and Moses earlier is, again, representing the presence of God. So what in the world would you go into a tent for? To talk to God. To keep God away from the people? It's, yeah, probably. Any other thoughts? I didn't hear you. Peace and quiet, yeah, as much as you could get outside in the desert with presumably thousands of people around. Peace and quiet. It's like you have your own special, like we have a church. Can you meet God anywhere? Of course you can. But it's helpful to have a dedicated place in which to do that. And all the people understood what was happening there. This is an important thing. Outside, away from the people. That is clear. This is not around there because, again, They cannot handle that. This was a sign of Yahweh's presence. So Yahweh doesn't want to get too close, but God is still around. So the people can look over there, oh good, Yahweh hasn't deserted us, at least he's talking to Moses, so we're probably not going to be killed by all our enemies or re-enslaved. So it's not God's mad but hasn't abandoned us. That's a good thing there. Let's see. Thus the Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one speaks to a friend. Then he would return to camp, but his young assistant Joshua would not leave the tent. Joshua becomes a very important figure later. His protege, in a sense, is Moses and God speaking face to face in an anthropomorphic sense. Two dudes talking to one another. The story suggests intimacy, that there is closeness, proximity, that Yahweh really cares about Moses and wants to convey things. It doesn't necessarily mean that God has taken human form and standing right in front of him. Moses said to the Lord, "See, you have said to me, bring up this people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. You have said, I know you by name, and you also found favor in my sight. Now," Moses says to God, "if I found favor in your sight, show me your ways so that I may know you and find favor in your sight. Consider, too, that this nation is your people." Hey, this is Moses bargaining again with Yahweh. You say you like me and I'm your friend. Good. But remember these people. Consider, too, that this nation is your people. He said, "My presence will go with you, and I will give you rest." And he said to them, "If your presence will not go, do not carry us up here. For how should I know that I found favor in your sight, I and your people, unless you go with us? So don't abandon us, God." The Lord said to Moses, "I will do the very thing that you have asked, for you have found favor in my sight. I know you by name. Show me your glory. The Lord and I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and will show mercy upon whom I will show mercy." That, by the way, is another way of Yahweh saying what his, her, its name means. What does the name Yahweh mean? I am who I am. I will be who I will be. I am reality. All that is me. There are various ways you could express that. I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious. I define reality. I set the terms. Moses wants to see his face. Show me your glory. I want to get to know you better. It's a nice thing. I'd like to know. But Yahweh says, "You cannot see my face, for no one shall see me and live." And the Lord continued, "See, there is a place by me where you shall stand on the rock. But if you really, really want to see me, okay, I'll figure out how to do that. Go stand on the rock, and when my glory passes by, I will put you in the cleft of the rock, and I will cover you with my hand until I pass by. Then I will take away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen." Michael?
I'm trying to remember the King James version of back. What is here translated as back, but I can't do it. Was it backside? You will see my backside. You will see my hind part. I don't think it's good.
I don't recall that. Why? Why can Moses only see God's behind or back, but not God's face or front or full glory? If you, Moses, here, let me just, God, in an anthropomorphic sense again, just hold you right up next to the sun. He'll be fried in an instant. But the glory, presumably, is not as strong in the back as it is the front. And if he's hiding, so stick him in the cleft of the rock, and then God's hand covers him up. And then when the full glory goes by, the eclipse type of thing probably works fairly well here. That full glory is too much for a human being. So you can have the tiniest glimpse from the backside, through the telescope type thing, maybe that works, but not the full glory. Even you, Moses, can't handle it. And then we'll get a sign, a symbol, that he has been in the presence of Yahweh. So think of how intimate that is. The people have misbehaved, but okay, and it's fair to say Moses has gotten on Yahweh's nerves, and he's always bargaining with him to get a little bit more, to a little less punishment, whatever. And if God had given Moses the 10 Commandments on 2 stone tablets, and what did Moses do with them? Preserve them for all time. He threw them down on the ground in anger because the people were acting up. And Yahweh's like, you could have just set them down on the ground. We would not have to do this again. Annoying. So the Lord said to Moses, cut 2 tablets of stone like the former ones, and I will write on the tablets the words that were on the former tablets, which you broke. Just in case you forgot, you did that. Be ready in the morning and come up in the morning to Mount Sinai. Present yourself there to me on the top of the mountain. No one shall come up with you. Similar to the earliest approaching the mountain, anybody who comes close, animals, you will die. So Moses cut 2 tablets of stone like the former ones. He rose early in the morning, went up to Mount Sinai as the Lord had commanded, took in his hand the 2 tablets of stone. The Lord descended in the cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed the name, the Lord, Yahweh. The Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. Hesed is the word, and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for 1,000th generation, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, yet by no means clearing the guilty, but visiting the iniquity of the parents upon the children, the children's children, the 3rd and 4th generation. Obviously, that's a later hymn attributed to Yahweh. I doubt Yahweh is out. I keep saying this in Genesis and Exodus. A lot of this feels like a musical where people just burst out in song. Miriam brings out her drum and starts singing, Yea, Shiruli Yahweh, Kiga Oga, Susravokavo, Rama, Bayam, horse and rider is cast into the sea. People don't do that in real life, but in the stories, they do, to tell a part of that story. So this is probably what we believe Yahweh to be. The very nature, the character, is one who's forgiving, one who has steadfast love. Meaning, no matter what we do when we're stiff-necked knuckleheads, God is still faithful. So, and if you're not sure, let's just keep reminding God that he's supposed to be faithful, and that works out well for everyone. Moses quickly bowed his head toward the earth and worshiped. He said, if now I have found favor in your sight, O Lord, pray, go with us. Although this is a stiff-necked people, I agree with you, they're pretty awful. I know myself, I've had to deal with them. Pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us for your inheritance. You would want Moses to be your attorney whenever possible. The next section, verse 10, he said, I hereby make a covenant. Is this a new covenant? Let's say it's the renewed covenant that already exists. So it's not a new marriage or wedding, it's renewing the vows in a sense. Before all your people I will perform marvels such as have not been performed in all the earth or in any nation. Well, you just delivered us from slavery, you did the 10 plagues, you've done all these other stuff that's terribly impressive. And the people among you whom you live shall see the work of the Lord, for an awesome thing I will do with you. Observe what I command you today. I will drive out before you the Amorites, the Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. If you get stuck with this reading, you can remember how I just pronounced them all. But the rule of thumb is, if you're not sure, say it with clarity and conviction, and everyone will believe that's exactly how Perizzites, for example, is pronounced. Take care, warning, pay attention, not to make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land of which you are going, or it will become a snare among you. Don't get trapped. Don't intermarry with those people that are pagan foreigners. You shall tear down their altars, break their pillars, cut a snare among you, and cut down their sacred poles, the various symbols of these other religions. That does not fit with our contemporary understanding of inclusivity and live and let live. No, you will not tolerate any of this other religion. Tear it down, destroy it. You shall not make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, for when they prostitute themselves to their gods and sacrifice to their gods, that's in a literal and metaphorical way. Some of it had temple prostitution or cultic prostitution, but it's also of selling yourself to something. Someone among them will invite you, and you will eat the sacrifice, and you will take wives from among the daughters for your sons. Don't lose your purity. Don't get perverted, tainted by these other groups. You shall not make cast idols. Well, that's a direct reference to the golden calf, but also anything else other than God. You shall keep the feast of the unleavened bread. What's that? That's a new one. That's Passover to what we would now call the Seder, which I just was able to go. Here's when you do it. All that the first opens the womb is mine, all your male livestock. No one shall appear before me empty-handed. That means as an offering. For 6 days you shall work. It's like, are these 10 Commandments? No. They're a it's continued, in fact. Ordinances here are things, important things that you should do. Keep the Passover, offer to God, follow the Sabbath. That's for 6 days you shall work. Don't offer blood of my sacrifice with leaven. The sacrifice of the Passover shall not be left in the morning. It really feels like this is a committee work rather than one person. This is important to me. Throw that in there too. The best of the first fruits of your ground you shall bring to the house of the Lord your God. Guarantee you the priest said that one. We're supposed to get the very best in the first. Give that to us. Thank you. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. It's like, how in the world are these things are not all equal? These are various levels that have been, as I say, put together. The Lord said to Moses, write these words in accordance with the words I have made a covenant with you in Israel. He was there, Moses, with the Lord for 40 days and 40 nights. He neither ate bread nor drank water. And he wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. So all the particulars to me are less important than Moses was in the presence of Yahweh for a while, and all the people knew it. Russ? What does the word redeem, like Jesus is the Redeemer, mean? To buy back specifically from slavery. So if you, let's say one owns a slave, and we had, the slave is worth $100, we would set that slave free by paying the bond price, or whatever it might be called, to the owner of the slave, and sets him, in this case him, free. God, Yahweh, owns, in that sense, all the firstborn males, it seems to me, animals and humans. And so the people are to make a sacrificial gift. This is not a literal thing, but a symbolic one. So to dedicate the child to God, what do Mary and Joseph do with the baby Jesus? They take him to the temple. Similar type of thing going on. We now baptize. That's not the same thing, but to offer this firstborn to God, redeem it, is to make that sacrificial, symbolic offering there. So this is not a sacrifice, but a ritualistic offering. One thing to remember, too, is I love consistency across the board and in everything. And if you go looking for consistency in all parts of the Bible, you're going to be very frustrated or will fake it to make it work. And so different time periods, why does God keep acting this way? I don't know, because that's how the people understood God. And certain things evolve over time. I don't think this is about child sacrifice. In fact, I think that's very much against what Yahweh wants. But I, Yahweh, am the Lord, and I've created all this, and so it belongs to me. You will give me your best, and you can redeem it, set it free. Presumably, Abraham and Isaac's story has already been told. You shall offer your son, and then we learn, though, he's set free with a ram in the thicket. Again, don't try not to get bad on. I'm speaking to myself. Why does it say this here, and they don't fit? Steve. Excellent preface, yes.
Because it bothers me. So they're going into the promised land, they're getting rid of the Canaanites and the Amorites.
That's called genocide now, by the way.
It's more than that, though, because it's also xenophobia. You don't mix with them, you kill them, you erase all traces of their history, you knock down their temples, destroy their writings. It is more than genocide. It's total elimination of any memory of these people.
It's so, you say the Amorites, Jebusites, and so on, it's more than genocide, it's xenophobia, it's destroying every trace of their memory. I would not argue with that at all. And one thing to be very mindful of, in our culture, which is not remotely similar to their culture in a whole bunch of ways, we are not in danger of being swallowed up as American, or say more broadly Western culture. Our culture now assumes as a native good, an inherent rather good, of diversity and inclusion and lots of things, as long as we fit under a rule of law or whatever the categories might be. There, they have been a loose tribe of people that were maybe related but not really. They all happened to be slaves. And historically, they all had Yahweh as their God and Abraham, but they hadn't been around that for 400 years. So a long, long time. And now going into this new place, the rules are going to be different. This is what it means. You must be pure. I'm going to avoid contemporary comparisons on purpose. But if you're surrounded by everybody who wants to kill you, and it's very important, if you give in a little bit, you'll lose your total identity. That's what the people are afraid of there.
That's scary, though, because basically what binds them together is hatred of the outsiders.
I wouldn't say, hey, I wouldn't argue strongly against that. Internal coherence is vitally important, and any outsider would threaten that, particularly when you were slaves and you had all these other culture, and now you're trying to develop your own, or be faithful to Yahweh's commandments would be a parallel to say developing your own. This is what it means to be an Israelite. It means we don't follow other gods. We have the Seder. We have the Sabbath. It's all set out for you. Now be this way. It's very, very hard to get into that mindset. But that is what the story says. Russ? let me say that for everybody. So in the Hebrew Scriptures, what we're studying, and particularly Genesis and Exodus, there are two broad understandings of, you could say, even the nature of God. One is inherently exclusive. Yahweh is our God, the God of the Israelites, against the gods of the Egyptians or Babylonians or whoever it may be. And it's very much this way. Yet also within the Scripture, there is a very different understanding of God that we call more universal. God belongs to everyone and everyone belongs to God. The books of Isaiah and Jonah, Job, all suggest this. One might say that's a major theme of Christianity. And you could also very reasonably argue that in the evolution of the understanding of God, I would say it moves from more the exclusive to the inclusive. And that is, when you're figuring it all out, it tends to be more narrow. Who are we? How are we related to God? How are we related to one another? Here's the commandments. When there's a bit more stability, they start to see that we're in fact meant to be the called, chosen people rather, as a benefit to the world and a blessing to the world. That idea is not really there strongly yet. They're trying to figure out their stuff and who they are and even how to get there alive, where Yahweh doesn't kill them or their enemies don't kill them. But it grows over time. This is something I think is very important. I try not to judge a person on the worst day of his life. Maybe he's done some good. And I would just suggest to you, if somehow some super artificial general intelligence or God or an alien could somehow review every moment of your life, how proud would you be of your 12 to 15-year-old phase? Not very would be most of our answer. I mean, there are highlights, but there are a lot of lowlights and like, well, this is their awkward phase when they're figuring out who they are and what they mean. And it's part of the story. It's important not to lose that. But it does evolve, and you could say, that, and this is a bit supersessionist, that's what Christianity is also trying to do. That it's God for not just the Jews, but also everybody else. That's the root of the story. Catherine?
I'm not saying it's a movement, but what bothers me is this is what they came from. The Egyptians treated them the same way.
That's the great point.
Yeah.
This is what the Israelites came from. It is, I don't know if it's human nature, but it seems to be a tendency. The Israelites escaped slavery, and people, the Egyptians in this case, there were people before, but doing this. They escaped to Egypt so they could have food and not die. And it's all throughout the basic summary, so I've learned going to Purim Spiels, which is the book of Esther. Somebody tried to wipe us out again. God saved us, now let's eat. That is a consistent story throughout the Bible. Unfortunately, what in this case the Israelites appear to do is, well, they tried to kill us. Well, we made it. Now let's go kill these other people and take their stuff. Not just Israelites, they in the story do that. Does that ever happen anywhere else in the history of the world? Yes, all the time. You finally get your own muscles or your own money, and then you take it out on the other guy, the one who did it to you before or somebody weaker than you. That is what people do. Is it terrible? Yes. Is it sin in the traditional sense? Yes.
Except God is telling them to do this.
That's the challenging part, yeah. And I believe the most helpful answer is what Russ is getting at. There is an evolution of the understanding of who God is, what God's like, what God asks for us. If you start out as a shepherding tribal set of disparate groups who are slaves, just think for yourself. Would you rather have a God who's a warrior on your side and can kill your enemies, or a nice, loving, inclusive God who wants everybody to get along? That's not true, Allison. If you want somebody to fight on your behalf if your existence is threatened. And if somebody breaks into your home at night, and they may or may not have a weapon, and you've just woken up from sleep, do you want to reason with them and assume they have your best interest in mind, or do you want to protect your family? That is how they're thinking of this. We were slaves, now we need the strongest God possible. It evolves over time. I don't need to make excuses for them. This is just what people do. Is it awful? Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Is it possible this is not an immediate kind of driving out of those other groups? It could have been a gradual, natural thing that occurred over a period of time.
Is it possible that you mean the Jebusites, Amorites, and the rest, it's not an immediate thing but gradual? It probably would be gradual as you move from place to place, but it doesn't the text doesn't suggest to me that this is, well, just learn to live with them for a while. It does suggest stronger, don't tolerate that. Don't succumb to that. The most interesting point is the next section. Moses came down from Mount Sinai, where he'd been with God for 40 days, 40 nights. As he came down from the mountain with the 2 tablets of the covenant in his hand, Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone because he had been talking with God. Sunburn? No. Radiant presence. Think about when if you fell in love, you had a baby. What does your face look like that day? Some people see you and know something is different. When Aaron and the Israelites saw Moses, the skin of his face was shining, and they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the leaders of the congregation returned to him, and Moses spoke with them. Afterwards, all the Israelites came near, and he gave them in the commandment all the Lord had spoken with him on Mount Sinai. When Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil or mask on his face. But whenever Moses went in before the Lord to speak with him, the tent, he would take the veil off until he came out. And when he came out, he told the Israelites what had been commanded. The Israelites would see the face of Moses, that the skin of his face was shining, and Moses would put on the veil again until he went in to speak with him. So the presence of God was radiant with him. Have you ever seen Michelangelo's statue of Moses? There is I got sidetracked. I printed it and didn't pick it up on the way here. In the Latin Vulgate, the Latin translation of the Bible, thank you, Catherine. If you can see Catherine, radiance or shining or shone is translated as horns. Is that demonic? No. But it was translated in the Latin as horns. And so and they're not just one, several. If you ever see Moses with 2 horns sticking out, that is showing the radiance of God in that literal sense. It's really, really fascinating to see that. Is that meant to suggest demonic? Is it meant to suggest the Jews are less? It has nothing to do with that at all. It is a mistranslation of the Hebrew. Instead of radiance, into horns. So if you ever see that, that is where it comes from. Did you know that? A few of you did? It's a really, really cool small thing. The rest of the book of Exodus is very detailed instructions, Sabbath regulations, how to construct the tabernacle, the making of the ark, what colors, what materials, and so on and so forth, all the way through chapter 40. And then it closes with the cloud of the Lord was on the tabernacle by day, and the fire was in the cloud by night, and the Lord journeyed with the people in each stage of their journey. Very strange, in my opinion, way to end all this description about how to make the stuff. And I mean for 7 chapters in a row, and then the book stops. Genesis, Exodus are essentially one continuous book, like Luke and Acts are one continuous book. How, other than the genocide bit, which is important not to lose, what do we know, what did you learn of what is the nature of God according to the book of Exodus? It's not the God that we think of in Christian tradition. Am I right, Allison? Where is God says, love your neighbor in there that we read? It's not there. Don't kill him. No, not there either. In fact, it says to kill the bad guy. The love piece is not there. The whole identity of God, the nature of God, is profoundly different in Genesis. Let me take that back. The very first part of Genesis, the cosmic, the first 11 chapters, is a universal God. And then, beginning in chapter 12 of Genesis, it's the Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and later Joseph's story. It's that family's history. And God is different. And that story continues with Joseph in Egypt, and then Joseph's descendants, the Israelites, we now call the Jews, with that different understanding of God. It evolves in other books, notably you're talking about Jonah, Job, Isaiah, and others, into a different, or I should say fuller, a more familiar even understanding of God, but that takes a while. It took hundreds and hundreds of years to write these stories, so it wasn't, think of how quickly things change in our culture. Here's one. Late 80s, to be gay was the worst thing you could be called in high school. Now, it's totally normal. Almost no one would accept that, to say that. That is shockingly different in a short period of time. The whole understanding of who God is takes hundreds, if not 1,000 years to evolve, because the culture is different. Communication's different. What else have you learned from Exodus that you couldn't stand or that you thought was bad? Allison? Tribalism in Exodus. So the tribalism is striking, we're right, you're wrong. Over the years, over the centuries, Jews have been accused of being Jews first and then citizens. When does the idea of the nation state arise, by the way? Yeah, so much, much later. Your point about the tribalism of we're right and you're wrong, thank goodness that doesn't exist anywhere in the world today, like between Democrats and Republicans, for example. It's totally normal, in fact, that that's the case. Is it right? That's irrelevant. It's very much the way things still are. Nancy. Say that again. Well, that is a very debated point now, more than it was recently. Are we Christians first and then Americans next? Are you, in today's society, is your racial identity or this group or that group first, or is it to be American first? Some people will get very, very bent out of shape if you say one over the other. And I'm not suggesting one is better. You have to think this way or you think this way. I would suggest a still very tribal way of looking at it. Tribal is in the group identity first. Russ? That is the message that God wants us to be free, free from slavery, free from sin, free from fear of death, and that God calls us into relationship with God's self and with one another. I'd say that's the root. Now, how they got there was not how we would get there. Quite circuitous in many ways, but I would say that is the root message. Yeah, that's true. Michael?
Certainly, what I take away from Exodus is important, the realization of how much the Ten Commandments are intertwined with the fact of slavery.
How much Ten Commandments are intertwined with the fact of slavery?
They were freed from slavery in Egypt. They let get unslave others. I would never have realized this until I looked carefully at it as it was said. And I see parallels, interesting parallels with the notion that the sins of the fathers will be visited on the children. That's what Lincoln said in the second inaugural.
Yes, the sins of the fathers will be visited on their children.
Things we didn't do.
So if I was treated this way, that I then treat people in the same way or worse, that is what happens, it seems, again, in human nature. Is that right? No, but that is the way things seem to occur. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you in the fall.